Welcome back to the Double Leg. I'm one half of the show, Hey Jab Picks. The other half of the show, the Parlay. Joining me in to break down some UFC 291. Let's get it. UFC's back in Salt Lake City for another pay-per-view headlined by Dustin Poirier and Justin Gaethje for the BMF title. Co-main event, Jan Blachowicz, Alex Pereira. Pretty solid card overall, 12 fights in total. What are your thoughts going into it?
Dude, we got some great fights on this card, exciting fights. Like the main event, it doesn't get any better than Justin Gaethje and Dustin Poirier, in my opinion, all the way dating back to their first fight. Each of them have had some wars since then, so I can't wait for this main event. I can't wait for this whole card. And as always, lots of money to be made out there.
Yeah, I can't wait for it. I've been waiting for this fight forever. I mean, even just after the Gaethje fight against Fiziev, like this was the obvious fight to make with where both guys are at in their career. Had to happen for the BMF title. I'm not a fan of the BMF title, but it is something that you can throw in there and make it a little bit more exciting. A lot of good fights on the card. Pretty high level card overall. I mean, you go from like Apex cards, even the London card. A lot of like debuters type fighters. In this one, you got a lot of guys that are, fought 3, 4, 5, multiple times in the UFC, and even a couple ladies as well to start us off on the card. But we're looking to keep her going moving into this pay-per-view. If you want to hop on the premium membership, the link will be down in the description below. You'll get all of our bets for 30 days, so it's less than $1 a day, and you'll get everything you need to know about every single UFC card, including a private Discord chat with all of our members. And last week, I did a live on Thursday with all the people in the premium Discord, and they really like that. So we're looking to do that every week. Also got the exclusive show in there as well. And then if you want all of our bets just for this week, they'll be available Friday for instant download. You can stay up to date with that at the Double Leg on Instagram. We're going to go through all the fights for UFC 291 and give you our predictions, the layout of what we're thinking moving into it. But these are not, your official bets, just picks for the sake of the show. So without any further ado, let's get into it with the main event. The BMF Championship main event. Dustin Poirier coming in at -140. Justin Gaethje sitting at +110. Over under 2.5 rounds. -120 for the over. -110 for the under. Both men extremely similar. 34 years of age. Justin Gaethje got a couple inches of height. Don't know how accurate that is, but either way, that's what it shows. Last 5 for Gaethje, 3-2, and Dustin Poirier 4-1. Both men only losses in a very long time are to Khabib Nurmagomedov and Charles Oliveira. Very similar spots. I mean, this is like you can't really pick two guys that are that similar. And in this one, we all know what we're going to get. We're going to get complete carnage. Dustin Poirier is going to come out throwing hands. Justin Gaethje is going to come out throwing hands. I wouldn't expect Dustin Poirier to be shooting takedowns. Could he? He could. I really don't expect Justin Gaethje to be shooting takedowns, but Poirier probably going to have a slight grappling advantage, maybe more so with the submissions, but both guys are going to throw hands. That's what they did in the first fight, and I don't expect anything different here. But what side are you going with?
Dude, it's almost impossible to find, an area either one of these fighters is going to be better than the other one at. I think Dustin Poirier all around is going to be a more controlled, composed fighter. Even though he does, like you said, he brings it. He throws hands from the get-go, but it's more of a controlled violence versus Justin Gaethje, who's out there just swinging, throwing haymakers, and it's worked out for him in his career. But against guys like Dustin Poirier, who can kind of weather that storm and who can hit you in the midst of all the chaos, that's where I see Justin Gaethje struggling. I mean, like you said, both guys are so similar. Both guys have lost to the same people. They've been submitted by the same people. I mean, both guys are 34 years old. I mean, it's crazy. It's hard to find that discrepancy on one side or the other. But at the end of the day, I got to lean Dustin Poirier. Just this style, like he's been in these fights. Dan Hooker, for instance, that was a fight on the feet that was just an absolute all-out war, and he was the one who came out on top. Dustin Poirier is hard to put away at this stage in his career, but he can finish you. So we've seen Justin Gaethje be finished by him before. The one thing though that I keep going back to is in Justin Gaethje's last fight against Fiziev, he had that crazy style at times, but he was way more composed than he usually is. He was a little more, I don't know if I would say relaxed in there, but you could just tell he wasn't really interested in just going, crazy and brawl with a guy like Fiziev. So if Justin brings that into this fight, which is going to be hard to do because you've already lost to the guy, you know what the last fight was with him. I see it being the same, but for him, if he does bring some of that into this fight, it gets pretty interesting in my opinion. But I got to stick with Dustin Poirier here. I'm a Dustin Poirier fan. I'm a Justin Gaethje fan, but from what we've seen in the past, I think this style of fight suits Dustin Poirier just a little bit better.
Yeah, obviously won the first matchup between them, and I kind of lean Poirier in this one as well too, just for all the facts that you just stated. The only thing that's kind of throwing me off a little bit is that it's going to be at Salt Lake and at elevation. I know I made a video on it. I don't know how much you have to take that into account going into this one, but there's always that lurking in the back of my mind. That's like, if it goes, round 3, round 4, round 5, Poirier has shown to be like even stronger in those later rounds. I mean, he got the round 4 finish against Gaethje the first fight, but in this one, it's a little bit different. I don't know if we're going to get a different outcome, but obviously the variables are different going into this one. So that's the thing, kind of like keeping me away from going Poirier confidently. But I do think at this point, Poirier has looked a little bit better as far as against his competition. Like Gaethje, there's a good case that you could make that Fiziev beat Gaethje. Like, you go back and watch that fight, rounds 1 and 2. I thought Fiziev won round 1. Round 2 was pretty close. Could have went either way. Round 3, Gaethje took it. But yeah, I mean, if Fiziev beats Gaethje, like, we're not having this fight. And Gaethje's probably looking, he's on a 2-fight losing streak then. And who do they match him up with next? For Poirier, you could make the same case. I mean, if he gets finished by Chandler, obviously he didn't, but he was not. He could have lost that fight. I mean, it was 1-1 going into the third. He gets taken down and then finds himself up on top and then gets the scramble and gets a submission. So the way these two fight, like, they're not ever gonna, like, it doesn't seem like they're ever gonna dominate someone, because they're taking shots, they're giving shots, they're just in wars, and this one's gonna be a war. The thing that I think could play the biggest factor is Poirier's jiu-jitsu, just because Gaethje, look at his losses. He's losing by submission. Granted, it's to Charles and Khabib, but Poirier's got a number of submissions on his record. He's got really solid BJJ. We just saw it in his last fight against Michael Chandler. If you can wear out a guy like Chandler, you can wear out a guy like Gaethje, and maybe you find yourself on the back, and Gaethje just doesn't have the presence of mind with how tired he is, with how much he's been beaten up to, defend the neck, and Poirier can slip something in. So yeah, I'm going to go Poirier. I'm going to keep an eye on that submission prop just moving forward, because I think that's a possibility. If it's juicy enough, might have to play it. But like I said, elevation, Gaethje could take over late if Poirier's not ready for it. We will move on to the co-main event. Light heavyweight bout. Alex Pereira's first UFC fight at light heavyweight comes in at -115. Jan Blachowicz -115. Straight pick 'em here. Over under 2.5 rounds, +125 for the over, -155 for the under. 4-1 for Alex Pereira. His only loss in the UFC is to Israel Adesanya. Jan Blachowicz last time out had the draw to Magomed Ankalaev. 40 years old for him, 36 years old for Alex Pereira. This is, it's kind of a clash of styles because, Pereira is the kickboxer of kickboxers. He is that guy when it comes to kickboxing. Jan Blachowicz, though, people are going into this one saying, like, he's just going to smother Pereira. That's not really what he's been doing lately. That's not really his go-to. Can he do it? Absolutely. That's how he beat Israel Adesanya, but that's not really where he's been winning fights. In fact, that's where he's been losing fights, is getting out-grappled. Like, you look at the Ankalaev fight, he was winning the fight on the feet. Ankalaev had to take him down to secure the draw. Was it actual draw? I don't know. I think Ankalaev still won, but either way, it is a draw. You look at the Rakic fight. He wins the first round on the feet, loses the second round on the ground to Rakic, and then third round, Rakic blows out his knee. Glover Teixeira, where does he beat him? Submits him on the ground. Israel Adesanya is really the outlier. Like that's where he won the fight, was on the ground. Look at all of his other fights. He's not really taking guys down. So to expect him to go in here and just take down Alex Pereira, I think is a bigger ask than people are really making it out to be, because Pereira trains with Glover. Glover's obviously great at takedowns and has a great ground game. So I would expect he's going to be ready to defend some takedowns in this one. And if Jan Blachowicz just wants to or thinks he can stand with Alex Pereira, I don't think it's going to go that well for him. What are you thinking?
I think people are going to be surprised at how strong Alex Pereira is at 205. I mean, 185, him making that weight was almost a miracle. If you looked, he was like walking around at 220 something before his last fight with Izzy. And then, over the course of a couple of months, cut down, but only cutting to 205, I think is going to be good for him. Like, yeah, he got knocked out by Izzy, but after a, 30, 40 pound weight cut. So it's like, that have anything to do with his chin? How's his chin going to look at 205? There's some questions there, but with Jan Blachowicz against Magomed Ankalaev, the leg kicks stuck out to me. I mean, he dropped him with one, really had him, that leg pretty beat up towards the end of the fight. And Alex Pereira does have those long legs that just kind of sit out there with his stance and stuff. If Jan connects on some of them, I think he could do some damage. But Alex is the type of guy, if you start honing in on that leg, he's such a good kickboxer that he's going to counter you at some point. And how many counters like that can you take if you're Jan? I mean, you're 40 years old. You've been in some wars recently. Kind of, I don't want to say he gave up against Glover, but he definitely faded pretty, into that second round. I thought he was fading until Glover got the sub. So, I don't see him going out and just being able to wrestle Alex with ease. I think that's the one part of Alex's game he's probably been working on more than anything. Like, you got the kickboxing secured. You're training with Glover, who has the blueprint to beat Jan. I'm not saying Alex goes out there and tries to sneak a submission or anything, but you know what his game plan is going to be. You know what that style is. Like, your training partner and teammate has fought and beat him. So I think that's a little bit of an advantage. Super interesting fight, though. Like, I've been thinking about this since it got announced. There's a chance Jan goes out here and he looks like he's 40 years old. He's a step slower. Maybe he can't reach with the legs. Alex is super long and pretty rangy. And on the other hand, maybe he does go out there and beat the leg up in the first round and then just get some takedowns and, does steal some rounds that way. But if it plays out on the feet, I see Alex and his length and his experience and kickboxing skill posing a pretty big threat to Jan. Like, how easy is it going to be for him to get in on a takedown when Alex is just, using his kicks, using his knees and everything up the middle to kind of keep him at bay and keep him off of him. So as far as a pick, this is tough, dude. This is super tough. This is a definition of a coin flip just because there's so many unanswered questions. But I'm going to take the risk and say that Jan Blachowicz doesn't look like he's 40 years old yet, and he does land some takedowns and just wears them down and finds the win. That's what I'm going to go with. And I've flipped back and forth on this so many times.
Yeah, I mean, it's a straight pick 'em. So, I mean, it is a very good matchup, just like the main event. But physical concerns for me, for Jan, would obviously be the age. But then also a positive for him is like the guy is like made out of steel. Like, the way he kicks people, it's like it doesn't even affect him. And the way he made Magomed Ankalaev like crumble with those leg kicks was like, damn. But then you look at Pereira. Pereira's pretty good at checking leg kicks. Like, he is a kickboxer, and he's a orthodox fighter. So if Jan wants to beat up the leg, it's going to have to do it from the outside. Ankalaev was a southpaw, so he's kicking the inside of the leg, and it's just not. It's a little bit harder to check. Like, you got to move, you got to turn your knee in. If he's from the orthodox, Pereira, you watch the fight with Izzy. Like, he was checking leg kicks pretty well. Even made him stumble right in the fifth round of the first fight, and that's what kind of led to him getting the momentum to get the knockout. And then you look at the second fight, Pereira in 2 rounds, Pereira landed 26 leg kicks. Like, he will also chip the legs But I don't know if that's going to work with Jan Blachowicz because it seems like he's just made out of steel. So I don't know. We'll see. I do think if it's on the feet, he can outpoint Jan, could knock him out. But he also has like really good volume on the feet. I think if it is just a kickboxing battle, he could stay safe and just outpoint him. He lands 5.23 compared to Jan lands 3.41. I just think he's going to be a little bit more active on the feet. So I'm going to go with Pereira. I'm going to bet that Jan can't impose the wrestling like people are expecting him to. And even if he does, like let's say he holds him up against the cage, just tries to wear on him a little bit. The way Judge has been judging fights, if it goes to a decision, probably going to be the guy that's landing more damage. So I'm going to go with Pereira. Great fight, though. Great fight.
Yeah, and I will add that Pereira, too, should have like a pretty big speed advantage, too, on the feet. And the way he hides some of his kicks and strikes, I think, will be surprising to Jan at times. I don't know if Jan will be able to pick up on that left high kick. And like I said, man, he's moving up, so he's going to be the faster fighter. Like you said, Jan's being a little bit older. It just makes it so interesting. I can't wait for this fight.
One last thing I forgot. The concern physically with Pereira is that he got knocked out like 4 months ago.
Yeah.
But if Jan's going to stand and strike with him, I would just favor Pereira. So can Jan knock him out? Sure. But that usually means that he's going to be standing and striking with him. If that is the case, I'm going to take Pereira. So that's just one last little nugget there. Welterweight bout. Stephen Thompson coming in at -180 against Michel Pereira. Coming in at +150. Over under 2.5 rounds. -210 for the over. +170 for the under. Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, 40 years of age for him as well. Pereira, 29 years old, 5-0 in his last 5. Undefeated in the UFC. And Stephen Thompson getting a win in his last time out against Kevin Holland. That one was fun to go back and watch because I believe you were there for that one. That was quite the fight. And Stephen Thompson coming in here off a win. But you got to take into account Kevin Holland broke his hand after the first round. And if you look at the first round, round 1 was the only round that Kevin Holland won. After that, Stephen Thompson just kind of took over and won the next 3 rounds and then the doctor stoppage. So if he doesn't break his hand, how does that fight play out? I'm not sure. But either way, it looked like a vintage Stephen Thompson type fight. Got a little bit more into a brawl than he normally does. He's a little more clean. Doesn't get hit as much. Michel Pereira, I don't know if he's going to be like, what's his game plan here? Like, you look at his last fights, he's been mostly a stand-up guy. He'll mix in the takedowns here and there. But I don't think you could stand and strike with Stephen Thompson. I would expect him to go for some takedowns. He averages 1.58. If he can implement that, he has a lot better chance, but I don't like his chances in a kickboxing battle. What do you think?
Yeah, it's interesting because Michel Pereira, you look at his last, what's he on, a 5-fight win streak? His last 4 wins don't really age that well. I mean, you got Santiago Ponzinibbio, who just got knocked out by Kevin Holland. You got Andre Fiallo, 2-fight knockout losing streak? Yeah. Nico Price, who just got knocked out by Robbie Lawler, and Chaos Williams, who arguably lost to that UFC debuter in his last fight after he was like a minus, what was he, 200-300 favorite? So none of them really aged that well. And now you got to go in there against Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, who's coming off of a, besides that first round and the handbrake, a phenomenal performance against Kevin Holland, who's super long and dangerous. And then you lost to Bilal Muhammad and Gilbert Burns. Those losses don't age bad in the least bit because those are 2 of the very top guys in the division. And then you beat Jeff Neal and outstruck him 171-85 in that fight. And we've seen Jeff Neal look pretty damn good against Vicente Luque and then hung with Shavkat Rakhmonov. So his last few fights are aging a lot better than Michel Pereira's. But again, there's that age factor. Stephen Wonderboy Thompson's 40. Michel Pereira looks like he's 40, but the dude's only 30 years old. Both guys are exciting fighters, though. They got exciting styles. But at range, I don't think there's anybody, even 40 years old, that really hangs with Stephen Thompson over the course of 3 rounds. Especially, you're going from fighting Santiago Ponzinibbio to Wonderboy Thompson. I mean, that's That's a huge gap in the striking. So yeah, I think Wonderboy does get this done. I think he I think he keeps this fight at range. He uses his kicks, doesn't let Michelle really get that close or even attempt a takedown. And if it's just going to be a straight up striking match, it's so hard to pick against Wonderboy.
Yeah, Pereira's been a pro since he was 18 years old. So he's been at it for a long time. This will be his 40th fight. So he's got a lot of experience for a 29-year-old. But Stephen Thompson probably a little bit more as far as kickboxing type goes. I'll be interested to see what Pereira does as far as game plan. But yeah, Pereira's been off for a while too. He's been off for over a year.
Mm-hmm.
Had a couple of cancellations. He was supposed to fight Sean Brady back in March, and then he was supposed to fight Stephen Thompson in June. Now he gets the rebooking. I gotta say, I gotta go with Stephen Thompson, and I'm honestly surprised by the price a little bit. Maybe
Me too.
Factoring it in because of the age. And Pereira, pretty well respected as far as the betting lines have gone. He was a slight favorite against Ponzinibbio. It's like minus 280 against Fialho. Fialho is like, if you don't finish Fialho at this point, it's like, what's going on?
Yeah.
And he actually lost. I think he lost the third round in that fight. Like he won the first two. That was at UFC 270. And then Fialho came back in the third, I believe.
And Fialho has like no third round in whatsoever.
Right. It's usually the guy that's fading as you go through to the second and third round. And that was his UFC debut. So, yeah, I'm going to go with Stephen Thompson. It's probably just a kickboxing masterclass once again. Lightweight bout here. Tony Ferguson going back down to lightweight after his 170 performance against Nate Diaz, but he's coming in at plus 255 against Bobby Green, who's coming in at minus 345. Over under 2.5 rounds, minus 178 for the over, plus 148 for the under. I'm surprised it's not King. I'm pretty sure it's supposed to be King, but everywhere else is Bobby Green. So wonder what happened with that, but
couldn't get to the DMV.
Probably could not. 0-5 in his last 5 for Tony Ferguson, trying to avoid the 6-fight losing streak. Bobby Green trying to get back in the win column after that no contest and the loss to Drew Dober. Pretty wide line here, but I kind of saw it coming. I'm not going to lie. Like Bobby Green's not at like the greatest point in his career, but Tony Ferguson has never looked worse. What are you thinking?
Yeah, I mean, this isn't a fight where I don't see Tony coming across and taking this thing on to the ground or being able to against Bobby Green. And if it stays on the feet, like Tony's got that crafty, weird, long style of striking. But I mean, Bobby Green's the king of fighting people at range and with the speed, even though he is a little bit older now and he is off of 3 losses in a row. But I mean, Tony just hasn't looked good at all since before the Gaethje fight, in my opinion. I mean, his shots aren't really hurting people anymore. I know he kind of knocked Chandler down, but I mean, it's not like he clipped him and Chandler was out for a second. He just kind of stumbled back, right? Yeah. So, there's not really much on Tony Ferguson's side that's screaming like this is a great underdog play this week. I think Bobby Green was looking pretty good against Jared Gordon until the no contest. He got clipped a few times, but Tony Ferguson's not going to come out there and hit you like Jared Gordon or hit you like Drew Dober. He's not going to, I mean, he doesn't have that snap and that power. I think Bobby Green evades and is able to slip a lot of Tony Ferguson shots and counter with his own and just kind of do that over the course of 3 rounds. I don't necessarily see either guy getting a finish here either. I think it goes to decision. And yeah, man, I got to stay with Bobby Green here. I know he hasn't really, Drew Dober fight. I will say he looked pretty damn good up until most of the fight until he got knocked out. If you look at the striking numbers in that fight, 73-34 in favor of Green, and up until he got, obviously flatlined. So, yeah, I don't see Tony Ferguson posing that KO threat to Bobby Green, and that's kind of Bobby Green's kryptonite. So, I got to go with Green.
Yeah, I hope Tony Ferguson looks better in this one, but I just don't see how it happens. Like the last fight against Nate was really tough to go back and watch, to be honest. Like watching it live, you could just tell these guys are a shell of what they once were.
Yeah.
And going back and watching it again, I'm like, good Lord. I don't know if this guy should be fighting anymore, but either way, they give him Bobby Green, and kind of said today, it was like, this is the test. If he gets knocked out by Bobby Green, who has one knockout in the last 10 years, and it was against Ally Quinta, he should retire, because that's what Ally Quinta did. And if Tony Ferguson gets knocked out, he absolutely should. But I think he'll probably be tough enough not to. I hope he's tough enough not to. But either way, he just can't keep up with Bobby Green as far as the volume goes. Bobby Green's going to be in there with the boxing. Leg kicks, I could see Tony Ferguson having some success with that. But even in his last fight, he was kicked Nate Diaz once, and Nate Diaz checked it, and his shin was bleeding the entire fight. So we'll see. But at 155, like, it's going back down to 155.
Yeah.
Does the chin hold up? You know, like, I don't know. Maybe a Bobby Green late finish might be cheeky, round 2 or 3. But yeah, I think it's just a Bobby Green doing what he does, and Tony Ferguson pressuring, getting hit, chasing, and just getting hit pretty much. Yeah, kind of a weird fight, but we'll see how it works out.
Yep.
Welterweight bout here, Kevin Holland coming at -150 against Michael Chiesa, coming at +120. Over under 2.5 rounds, +130 for the over, -160 for the under. Kevin Holland 3-2 in his last 5. So is Michael Chiesa, but he's on a 2-fight losing streak. 35 years of age for him. Kevin Holland always going to have a pretty sizable reach advantage against these welterweights. 81 inches for him, 75.5 for Michael Chiesa. Kevin Holland, obviously the ex-middleweight fighter, and Michael Chiesa, the ex-lightweight fighter. So will he have a pretty big, sizable size advantage? Absolutely. But Kevin Holland even said in his last fight, like, the hand that he broke against Stephen Thompson wasn't 100%. Either way, he got the win, round 3 knockout with the left hook, but didn't use his right hand that much in that fight. So kind of got to wonder where that's at now, because he will go into a fight if it's not 100%. So where is it at now? Where's everything at physically going into this one? Chiesa been off for a while, almost 2 years. Last fight was November of 2021. That was against Sean Brady. He lost. And the one before that, he got submitted by Vicente Luque. So he hasn't had a win in over 2 years. That was his last one was Neil Magny. We all know the deal with Chiesa. He's going to want to implement the wrestling. Hasn't been able to do that successfully against his last 2 opponents, but that is Kevin Holland's kryptonite. So can he have success with that? What do you think?
Yeah, that's what it all boils down to, because if he does, his jiu-jitsu is good enough to where I think he will dominate Kevin Holland on the ground. But, Holland, if he's been smart, I mean, I know his last few fights, he's kind of fighting, strikers. But if he's been smart, he's been working on the wrestling. And if he's trying to get to be a better fighter, he's been working on the wrestling. So, for the defense at least. And if he has been and is able to stuff Chiesa's shots, I mean, I think he just destroys him on the feet, if I'm being honest. He's so long. His punches have this snap on it that just seems to hurt guys when he connects flush. And if he does that against Chiesa, I think he gets the knockout. But if Chiesa comes in and has been working hard in these last 2 years he's been off and can get the takedowns again, man, I think he has a chance to sub Holland, because we've seen it time and time again. Holland gets himself into some bad situations. But for Kevin Holland, I mean, you win knockout over Ponzinibbio. Like we talked about the Wonder Boy fight. And before that, you lose to Khamzat Chimaev in the first round, but Khamzat and Michael Chiesa are completely different realms. So it does get interesting. I think Kevin Holland wins this fight. I don't see Chiesa. I don't want to say I don't see him improving in the last 2 years, but I feel like he's doing so much more outside the octagon now, working for the UFC. Like, how much is he still dedicated to, making a run in this division at 170 or, becoming a much better fighter? Like, he's probably getting paid pretty decent outside the octagon now. I don't know if that hunger's still there compared to Kevin Holland, who fights for money. I mean, this dude is hungry. He wants big fights. He wants to win. He wants bonuses. So yeah, I got to rock with the Trailblazer on this one.
Yeah, I'm kind of thinking the same way. It's like, where is Chiesa at in his career? As far as like, where does he go from here? 35 years old, working with the UFC, working with ESPN, doing a lot with that. I've been seeing him a lot with everything, like post-show, pre-show, was it weigh-in shows, all those type of shows. So It's clear, probably never gonna make a title run again, but just taking fights because like he enjoys it. He likes training, likes preparing for stuff. For Kevin Holland, I think he's just talented, much more talented on the feet. But even on the ground, like the BJJ is pretty solid. And I was honestly surprised how long he lasted with Hamzat. Like
Yeah.
those transitions, they were that like he was making Hamzat go through, and Hamzat just was like a step ahead of him every time. But Holland was still forcing some stuff. I think coming into this one, I think he should be able to negate the grappling of Chiesa and piece him up on the feet. If he's smart enough, like he should be able to get the win here. That's just what it comes down to. Like just much more talented at this point in his career. Chiesa, he's only been knocked out once though, and it was by a cut. It was kind of back in 2014 against Joe Lozon. So can Kevin Holland get the knockout is the question. Chiesa's been submitted 4 times. Maybe a Holland submission prop.
I was just gonna say
a little cheeky because he's got good submission.
Yeah, he's long.
If Chiesa shoots a takedown and it's not the cleanest, Kevin Holland could snatch something up, or maybe a club and sub type thing because Chiesa's pretty tough, but has been submitted 4 times. So yeah, keep that one in mind. But we're both on Kevin Holland. The heavyweights, Derek Lewis coming in as the dog, plus 133 against Marcos Rogerio de Lima, coming in at minus 165. Over under 1.5 rounds, plus 165 for the over, minus 200 for the under. 1-4 in his last 5 for Derek Lewis. It's been a rough patch for him. That's why you see the underdog price there. 4-1 for Marcos Rogerio de Lima, 38 years of age for both men. And the Black Beast coming in here as the underdog. I kind of saw it coming, but I'm also kind of surprised because look at who he's fighting. Like Marcos Rogerio de Lima lose to these guys too. Like there's no way that de Lima beats like a Spivak, a Pavlovich, a Tuivasa, a Gan. Like that's not going to happen. So I got to think there's a lot of value on Derek Lewis as a dog. Like you always got to look at Derek Lewis as a dog and be like, okay, he can always land that one shot. Then you look at Rogerio de Lima. He's only been knocked out once in his entire career. You look at how many fights he's had, 30 fights. And he's only been knocked out once. He was an ex-205er, but he's been up at 255, 265 heavyweight for a number of his past fights. I don't know. I mean, he's got the momentum for sure. Oh, yeah. If Derek Lewis loses this, I don't know, like if he really cares about it that much. I would expect him to come into this one and be like, all right, this guy ain't going that far in the heavyweight division. Like I could take him out. And I think he does. I think he does beat him. I don't think de Lima can stay safe for 3 rounds, nor do I think he'll have the confidence that he's had against these other lower level guys. Like he goes in there swinging. He whips leg kicks. He'll go with the takedowns. Derek Lewis probably going to be ready for those takedowns. And we all know he can just stand up if he really wants to. So, yeah, I think Derek Lewis is going to be my pick. I don't think de Lima's going to have the confidence standing and banging with him like he has been. And I don't think he'll be able to take him down and do the kind of work he's been doing to the other guys. So I'm going to go with him. What do you think?
Yeah, man. The one thing about Derek Lewis is that if you're going to bet on him, especially as an underdog, he's live at every second of this fight, no matter what happens in round 1, 2, 2.5. It could be the end of the 3rd round. He could put you out. And that's exactly the type of fighter you want to have your money on. A guy who will fight 3 rounds, who has the power that Derek Lewis has. And I mean, he's kind of taken I don't want to say a big step down in competition, but he's coming off of fighting, the Cyril Gans, Tai Tuivasa, Sergey Pavlovich, and Spivak too. So now you fight Marcos Rogerio de Lima, who just beat Waldez Cortez Acosta, and Andrei Arlovsky, who's like 75 years old. And then lost to Blahoy Ivanov just barely over a year ago. I mean, you saw Blahoy Ivanov against Alexander Romanov. Looked bad, like bad. And then that's the guy that beat Marcos Rogerio de Lima last. So, yeah, and I think a lot of people are going to expect de Lima to come out here and beat Derek Lewis with ease just because of how Derek Lewis has looked recently. But, I mean, he's got nothing to lose now. Derek Lewis isn't hunting titles anymore. This dude can just go out there, relax, and throw the hands. And like you mentioned, if he does get taken down, he can just stand back up. I know Spivak submitted him in the first round, but he had to take him down 6 times to do that.
Yeah.
Like, that's a lot of times to get back up. So what happens when Marcus Rogerio de Lima gets a takedown, Derek Lewis pops up, gets a takedown, Derek Lewis pops up? At what point does de Lima just say, what the fuck? I mean, I can't hold this guy down. I'm exhausted now, and he's hitting me with these massive power shots that, knock a lot of people out. So, yeah, for that reason, I think Derek Lewis as a dog is a great play. There's just the risk that he comes out there and gets smoked too, because you just don't know at this point in his career. But as far as the pick, I'm gonna side with you. I like Derek Lewis.
Yeah, the one concern I would have for Derek Lewis is taking leg kicks, because de Lima whips those leg kicks pretty hard.
Yeah.
And if he just, kind of how Derek Lewis fights like most of his career, and especially nowadays, kind of sits like towards the back to the cage, kind of waiting for you to come in, and then he'll go. If he just sits there and, allows de Lima to pressure him up against the cage and then just whip leg kicks and stay safe, he could just, lose rounds that way, and it could be a really boring fight. But yeah, it's not like Derek Lewis is getting like cold cocked, like he's getting, chinned and flat out. Like obviously the Tuivasa one was like a nosedive, but after that, like Pavlovich, it wasn't like a nasty KO. And
kind of a controversial stoppage.
Yeah, controversial stoppage. Spivak just does what he does on the ground. So yeah, I gotta go Black Beast. Welterweight bout, Gabriel Bonfim making his sophomore appearance in the UFC against Trevin Giles, who's coming in at plus 235, minus 310 for Bonfim. 14-0 for Bonfim, undefeated. Trevin Giles, 3-2 in his last 5, 30 years old for him. He's been around for a while. And before he even got to the UFC, he had some pretty solid wins. Brendan Allen, Ryan Spann, and then got to the UFC. Was a 185er. It was a 205er, and then was a 185er, and now he's a 170er. Looks like that's more so his weight class. But the losses to Duplessis and Morales, and then back-to-back wins against Louis Cosi, and a split decision to Preston Parsons. I was at that fight. I didn't think Trevin Giles won, I'll be honest.
Yep, I'm with you.
It was a close fight. And it seems like he has some pretty solid striking on the feet, solid jab. He's going to have good movement. But Bonfim also carries the same attributes, as well as a pretty nasty submission game. You look at how many submissions he's got. It's 11. And all finishes. 14-0, all finishes. 3 KOs, 11 subs. Got some pretty solid boxing. The only thing I saw, like, when you watch him fight, it was against Trey Waters, who's like 6'5" or somewhere around there. He's like super tall on the Contender Series. Bonfim, not a small guy. I mean, he's 6'1" for 170, but Trey Waters is tall as hell.
Yeah,
and he used his jab pretty well to like get inside of Trey Waters, but he would kind of jab and then like duck his head back and then kind of swat down. Like if you have a good left hook against Gabriel Bonfim, you could land something, because he swats pretty hard with that left, the rear hand when he's in orthodox, and it could lead to some openings. I don't think Trevin Giles has that type of pop in his left hand as far as the left hook goes. But eventually, I think somebody will expose that. For Gabriel Bonfim, I don't see how he loses this one, if I'm going to be honest, unless he just throws a complete dud, kind of like his brother did his last time out. But yeah, I got to go with Bonfim. What'd you think?
Yeah, this Gabriel Bonfim is better than his brother, a better fighter than his brother. I think we all knew that coming into even his brother's last fight a few weeks ago. Trevin Giles, though, like you look at his record, he's got some great wins on there. Roman Dolidze, Preston Parsons is actually a pretty tough fighter they beat. I know controversial, but the Dolidze fight kind of sticks out to me because he was able to take Dolidze down once, had him in some nasty positions. He was able to survive some of Roman Dolidze's top pressure. But Bonfim is just like this another level of grappler, in my opinion. And if he does get a guy like Trevin Giles to the ground, I think Trevin Giles is going to be a little in over his head, because Bonfim, some of the submissions he's pulling off are just ridiculous. I mean, he's able to advance position. He's able to sink in submissions from everywhere, legs, neck. I mean, he had a Von Flue choke on the fucking Contender Series. I mean, the guy is super, super talented. So yeah, I think Trevin Giles could hang in there for the first round, but after that, I think Bonfim probably starts taking over. And if it hits the ground, I think Bonfim is just going to be a little bit better than these guys that Trevin Giles has fought recently. I know Preston Parsons' grounds game is really, really good, and Trevin Giles was able to survive it, but he was taken down 3 times in that fight. Like, and if Bonfim gets you down, he's going to be on that next level than Preston Parsons. So, yeah, I'm going to stick with Bonfim here.
Yeah, 3 submission attempts for Preston Parsons.
Yeah.
And I thought a couple of them were going to be locked up and done, but he got out of it. He's got decent submission defense. He's been submitted twice, but that was, back in 2019, Trevin Giles, by Gerald Mearshot and Zach Cummings. So can Bonfim pull it off? I think he does. It's just it's going to be tough 15 minutes, to stay safe against a guy like Bonfim, who's got all of his win by finish. Solid hands too. I mean, he's no slouch there. So yeah, got to go with him. Middleweight bout here, Claudio Ribeiro coming in at plus 190 against Roman Kopylov, sitting at minus 230, over under 1.5 rounds, minus 165 for the over, plus 135 for the under. The Russian, who is 3-2 in his last 5, and Claudio Ribeiro, this is going to be his 3rd UFC appearance in a pretty short time span. 4-1 in his last 5. The one loss to Abdul Razak Al Hassan. He got TKO'd in the 2nd round. Last time out was against Joseph Holmes, and he got a dub. But Joseph Holmes, I believe he got cut. If he hasn't, he eventually will be. But, yeah, just not the best opponent there. The win on the Contender Series was like just a nasty left hook that got him out of there. But coming into this one against Kopylov, pretty solid kickboxer. I would think a lot more clean with the hands. Could even mix in a takedown. I doubt it, because I just think he's going to be a lot sharper with the hands. Looked really good his last time out against Punahele Soriano as an underdog.
Looked really good.
2nd round TKO. It's probably why you see this price at minus 230. Ribero's live for a knockout, but I just don't think he's going to be clean enough with the striking that he's going to be able to land it. So I'm going to go with Kopylov just based off of technique, cardio, and just durability too. What do you think?
Yeah, I think if Ribeiro is going to win the fight, it's got to be early, I would think. I think he's going to fade as the fight goes on. And if he does want to win this fight, I think he's got to kind of fight him like he did in his last fight against Joseph Holmes, land some shots and then kind of engage in the clinch and maybe just try to wear Roman Kopylov down, because Kopylov at space is super underrated in my opinion. Like, his kickboxing is very, very sharp. I mean, we saw it against Alessio De Chirico. I know that was his last fight in the UFC. But he knocked him out in the 3rd round and just pieced him up the whole fight. Same thing with Soriano. Like you said, Soriano was a pretty decent-sized favorite going into that fight. And Roman Kopylov landed a takedown, outstruck him like double up into the point he knocked him out. And just looked really good, in my opinion. Showed that he's a pretty well-rounded mixed martial artist. Now, with Claudio Ribeiro, I mean, he is an imposing figure. Like, you look at him, the dude's massive. He's super strong. I know we saw the knockout on Contender Series, but to be able to catch a guy like Roman Kopylov with that type of shots, just kind of low percentage, like little to none. I don't think he has a chance to land that type of wild, big left hook. And if he does start swinging like that, I see Roman just kind of countering him and that playing into his advantage. So, yeah, I got to stick with Roman Kopylov here. I think it's a little parlay piece. I just don't see where Claudio is going to be much, much better than Roman here at all.
Yeah, I think even with the elevation too, like Ribeiro doesn't have great cardio to begin with. Kopylov, like, he's super explosive. That's what Ribeiro does. Going to whip hard leg kicks early. And like you said, if he wins, I think it's got to be in the 1st round, maybe early 2nd round. But the longer the fight goes, I think Kopylov, he's got much better technique. What does better technique do for you? It helps you preserve energy, and you're going to need that fighting in Salt Lake City, and especially in a fight like this. I think he takes over late. Could find a late finish, round 2 or 3. But either way, I think he just pieces him up. Got to go with him. Welterweight bout, Jake Matthews coming in at minus 300 against the debuting Darius Flowers, sitting at plus 225. Taking it on short notice is Darius Flowers. Both men 28 years of age. Jake Matthews been around for a while. He was on the Ultimate Fighter a while ago, but he's kind of been up and down in the UFC. His last time out against Matthew Semelsberger was not his best performance. He went in there as a pretty sizable favorite, and you saw right through it. I think you took a bet on Matthew Semelsberger.
Oh, yeah.
And cashed the ticket there. But he's fighting Darius Flowers here on short notice. He was supposed to take on Miguel Baeza. Darius Flowers got the contract on the Contender Series, and he was matched up against Amiran Gogaladze, who was from Georgia, and Flowers was a plus 240 underdog. And Gogaladze is going for the triangle, gets slammed on his shoulder, and the shoulder pops out. Darius Flowers gets a win. I would find it hard to believe that he was not in that spot to take a loss. I'm being honest. Okay, because Darius Flowers, he didn't have like the greatest regional run. Like, let's just be straight up. Like, a good amount of losses. He flirted with some boxing fights, lost pretty much all those as far as what I could see at Tapology. He had like 3 straight wins, 2 of them in LFA, and they were both knockouts. And then he gets the Contender Series fight against a guy who was like a pretty solid prospect from Georgia. So
big favorite too.
Yeah, he was a pretty big favorite. He gets a win by an injury that he caused, but an injury nonetheless. Coming in here against Jake Matthews, I find it hard to believe that he's gonna come in this one and win, that they want him to win. Like, that, granted, this is a fight. Like, it's not always they want this guy to win, but he's taking on short notice. And like, why hasn't he fought since his Contender Series fight? That doesn't really make much sense. But yeah, I just think Jake Matthews is probably better. Definitely more talented as far as everything goes. Could he let you down? Absolutely. He's had a lot of letdown performances. The one that sticks out that he did well in was this like return fight against Fialio, but that doesn't age well either. So it's at minus 300, a little chalky, but Darius Flowers, I just don't think, he could catch him, but I just don't think he's as technical, as skilled as Jake Matthews. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And especially short notice going in to fight at elevation for Darius Flowers, I think is going to be a big disadvantage because he does have that kind of that style and size and everything where he burns hot. He's going to burn some energy out there, and he's explosive, and that could come back to haunt him, especially in this fight against Matthews, who can fight at a kind of a chaotic pace like we saw against Fiallo and Matthew Semelsberger. But I just don't see where Flowers is going to have the upper hand here. I was looking too. Jake Matthews on the feet, he's pretty damn good defensively. Throughout his whole entire UFC run, all the fights in the Ultimate Fighter, everything, which is a lot of fights, he's only hit 2.24 significant strikes per minute with a 61% defense. That's pretty damn good for that many fights. So I think on the feet, he'll be the clear favorite here. Darius Flowers, obviously a strong dude, but if he does come in there and try to wrestle Jake Matthews or go for any slams again or anything like that, I think he just burns himself out, especially at elevation. I think Jake Matthews walks away with his hand raised.
Yeah.
Pretty simple as that, from my opinion, at least. I haven't seen a bunch in Darius Flowers that I'm just over the moon about.
Yeah, me either. It's MMA. Anything could happen, but I think Jake Matthews should be able to get it done. Flyweight bout here. CJ Vergara coming in at minus 170 against Vinicius Salvador, sitting at plus 140. Over under 2.5 rounds, plus 140 for the over, minus 170 for the under. 4-1 in his last 5 for Vinicius Salvador. This will be his sophomore outing. 26 years of age for him, though. So 6 years younger than CJ Vergara, sitting at 32 years of age, 3-2 in his last 5. Last time out, nearly gets finished in the first round against Daniel Lacerda and went on a run for a while and then came back in round 2 and got her done after Daniel Lacerda gasses out like he always does. Just had to withstand it, and he did. But either way, coming in here as the favorite against Vinicius Salvador. Who do you like him?
I think it's all CJ Vergara, and for one big reason is that Vinicius Salvador let Shannon Ross hit him 67 times on the Contender Series, and Shannon Ross after that hasn't lasted more than a minute
Yeah,
in his last couple of fights.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I know Salvador looked good in that fight at times. He is a good striker. He is kind of a dog. Like we saw it against Victor Altamirano. He, regardless of being taken down 3 times and outstruck and stuff, he never quits fighting. He'll fight you to the very end. But obviously, CJ Vergara is that same exact way. I think the last fight for CJ, where he was, kicked in the head in the first round and basically ran laps like he was running the 800-meter around the octagon. Regardless of all that, he hung in there, he survived, and he came out super strong in the second and kind of, flipped the script on him and got the KO or TKO finish. And CJ's also been fighting guys, Tatsuro Taira, Clayton Rodriguez, Ode Osborne. I mean, he's fought some good fighters. And whereas Vinicius Salvador is coming off of a loss to Victor Altamirano, who just got dominated by Tim Elliott. So, yeah, I see CJ Vergara walking away with this fight. I think he's tough enough. I don't think Salvador's striking's all that it's cracked up to be. He's smooth and he's pretty slick, but I think people expected him to just have this flatlining power after he knocked out Shannon Ross. But I think it was just Shannon Ross just can't eat punches. So I'm gonna stick with CJ.
Yeah, this one's weird because it's it's flyweights for one, so a lot of weird stuff can happen. I look at CJ Vergara he doesn't have the best striking. If you look at the fight against Lacerda, he got pieced up. Against Ode Osborne, he looked okay. It's just on the feet. I think he can get exposed, and a guy like Vinicius Salvador could expose it. Didn't look great in his first fight at the UFC against Altamirano. He looked loopy. Didn't look like he had too much snap. But you look at how many KOs he's got on his record. He's got 13 KOs. That's 13 of his 14 wins. All wins by finish, by the way. So if he's going to win, it's probably going to do it inside the distance against CJ Vergara. But Vergara's tough. Vergara's very tough. And I also question the type of run for Vinicius Salvador. On the regionals, there was a point he was 1-3 in his last 4. Lost to Luis Filho, Rafael Costa, win over Andrei Teixeira, and then a loss to Jafel Filho, who we just saw last week. And then he goes out a 3-fight win streak, gets the Contender Series fight, goes into that fight against Shannon Ross as a plus 200 underdog. Not respected by the books at all. And then goes in against Altamirano. It's a pick-em against Altamirano. That was a close fight. But either way, it just neither guy did that much to really cement themselves to be yeah, that guy clearly won. But Vergara, I think he's probably going to be tough enough to not get finished. And like you said, the level of competition just seems a little bit better. So I would go with Vergara. I just don't like betting a favorite like this in a spot.
Not at that price.
Yeah, in a spot like this, it's I just don't really like it because Salvador is dangerous and Vergara nearly got finished if Daniel Lacerda had any type of cardio. So yeah, for the sake of the pick, I'm going to go with CJ Vergara, but Salvador, I think he's live. So got to keep an eye on it. Welterweight bout, Uros Medic coming in at plus 150 against Matthew Semelsberger, sitting at minus 180. Both men, 30 years of age, over under 1.5 rounds, minus 155 for the over, plus 125 for the under. Both men 6'1". Matthew Semelsberger, slight reach advantage, 3-2 in his last 5. And coming off a loss to Jeremiah Wells, which was a very weird fight. But for Uros Medic, he's coming in here on short notice. Semelsberger was, who is he supposed to take on? Johan Linus, that's who he's supposed to be taking on. And Medic coming on in here on short notice. He was a 155er. This is going to be at 170. And I don't know if that's a permanent move, but it seems maybe it's just because it's on short notice. But he's a pretty big 155er, so he probably won't look too much smaller than Matthew Semelsberger. Semelsberger maybe a little bit thicker, but Semelsberger has one of the craziest knockdown rates, I think, in the UFC. The guy has 9 knockdowns, I believe. 1, 2, 3, 4, 7. Yeah, 9 knockdowns in his 8 UFC fights. And if you're, yeah, 8 UFC fights, 9 knockdowns, and he only has 2 KOs. So he's knocking dudes down, but he's not quite finishing them. The 2 KOs that he's got is Jason Witt and Martin Sano. So his last time out against Jake Matthews, knocked him out twice or 3 times, and then knocked down Jeremiah Wells twice. So 5 knockdowns in his last 2 fights. The guy is like cast iron too. It seems like if you could take shots from Jeremiah Wells, like you could probably take shots from anybody because that guy's got some big pop and he's just a wild fighter. So I would think Semelsberger could land, the bigger shots, the bigger moments in this fight against Medic, but Medic has some pretty solid volume. I don't think the level of competition that he's been facing is the same as Semelsberger, but I think Semelsberger probably has the bigger moments, could even go to the grappling, and probably just wins a decision. But Medic, he's like talented with the striking. You haven't really seen it at like that type of level. He got knocked out or he got submitted by Jalen Turner, and that's like his only good opponent that he's faced. So I'm going to go with Matthew Semelsberger. What are you thinking?
Yeah, I don't know how I get off the train. I mean,
Yeah,
I like him a lot. Like you said, man, the knockdown rate is crazy. He's obviously got some power in his shots. And the one thing that I go back, like I ask myself, is Jeremiah Wells better than Uros Medic? I think he is. I think he is right now. And if Jeremiah Wells can't get takedowns on Matthew Semelsberger, he probably gets knocked out at some point in the fight. Like he was hurt so badly on those knockdowns. And I don't think if he hurts Medic, I don't see any world where Medic goes out there and gets a takedown on Semelsberger. So that makes me think that if Semelsberger's chin holds up, he can eat some of the shots from Medic early, some of the body kicks, leg kicks. I think he'll just take this fight over and show there's levels to this game. Like I've been super impressed with Semelsberger, even in the loss to Jeremiah Wells. Wells he's older, but he is, newer to the UFC, and a lot of people are super high on him. And like I said, he about spoiled everybody's bets in that first round with the 2 knockdowns and looked pretty good until he got taken down 6 times. So, and the Jake Matthews performance was obviously super impressive. So, yeah, I'm gonna stick with my man Semelsberger here. And like I said, I think as this fight goes on, he just starts to take over and either finds the maybe late finish or just gets the decision.
Yeah, I think he's a solid bet this week too,
for sure.
And that line then is climbing too. It was like minus 145, so minus 150. And now it's moving up towards like minus 200. So
yeah,
you want it, you probably got to hop on pretty quick because it could keep going. Flyweight bout here. Miranda Maverick coming in at minus 350 against Priscilla Cachoeira. Over under 2.5 rounds. Minus 115 for the over, minus 115 for the under. Priscilla Cachoeira was supposed to be taking on Joanne Wood. She's out. In steps Miranda Maverick, and she goes in as a pretty sizable underdog in this one. 4-1 in the last 5, though. Priscilla Cachoeira, the zombie girl. 2-3 for Miranda Maverick. It's been quite the rough patch for her, I would say. She came into the UFC and looked pretty good, but hasn't been the best as of recently. Priscilla Cachoeira has had a tough go about as far as getting fights because she was scheduled to fight Sijara Eubanks, and then Eubanks missed weight, and then she was supposed to fight Karine Silva, and Cachoeira missed weight, and then now she was supposed to fight Joanne Wood. Joanne Wood pulls out. In steps Miranda Maverick. Pretty early turnaround for Miranda Maverick. Like she just kept coming off the loss to Jasmine Jasdavicius back in June 10th. So
Canada.
Yeah, a little bit over a month where she was a pretty sizable favorite again, and she lost to Jasmine Jasdavicius, but 2 different type of fighters in this one. Cachoeira, the downside of her is her grappling, and then the upside is like she's just number 1, a junkyard dog. Number 2, she's got pretty solid power for a 125er. And I'm looking at this one like kind of like the dog spot because Miranda Maverick hasn't looked like the best as far as recently, especially on the feet and even in the grappling. Like her only win by sub in the past 4 years is to Sabina Mazo, who's like no longer in the UFC. Can she get the sub in this one? What do you think?
I don't know. I mean, I've gone back and forth the last couple of weeks, or since this fight was announced, really. And when preparing for this show, is that it's either Miranda Maverick isn't as good as we thought, or Jasmine Jasudavicius was just way better than we thought. And I think it's a little bit of both. And then you're going into fight a girl like Cachoeira, who obviously lightning in her hand. And I might say something crazy here. Outside of Amanda Nunes, there's nobody else in the women's divisions that really has that lightning in their hand besides Priscilla Cachoeira, in my opinion. I'm not saying she's as good a fighter as Nunes or anything of that caliber. I'm just saying, like, recent memory, when you think about girls just flatlining people who are active in the UFC right now, I mean, Priscilla Cachoeira kind of pops off the page to you. So yeah, man, if Maverick can't get it to the ground, I think Priscilla has a chance to put her out, if I'm being honest. I think Jasmine Jasudavicius obviously was a lot bigger than Miranda Maverick and was able to land some good shots using her length and her reach. And this is another fight where Cachoeira is going to have a 4-inch height advantage. Let's see, her reach is going to be about the same, but she'll be the bigger fighter. So, yeah, as a dog, man, this is the type of girl you want to bet on as a dog. Somebody who can put the lights out, somebody who's going to scrap and can take shots. I mean, there's nobody who eats a better shot than Priscilla Cachoeira either. So, yeah, I think I'll probably take a shot on the dog. For one, it's women's MMA. If you're betting on women's MMA, it's got to be dog or pass at this point. And it's exactly what this is. So,
yeah, I cannot bet Miranda Maverick at this by no means. It's pretty much dog or pass for me. And honestly, at that price, like, that's a solid price to take a flyer on Priscilla Cachoeira because she's only been subbed in the UFC once, and it was, well, actually twice, but you can kind of throw out the Valentina Shevchenko. That was 5 years ago too. But since then, she's only been subbed once, and it was Jillian Robertson, and it was at like the buzzer. She was going in poking eyes. She was ready to get it all. She was ready to risk her whole career to get that win. And if you're putting money on someone, you like that. You like that. By any means necessary, you could get that done. And Priscilla Cachoeira, she's just a dog. And she's been training at MMA Masters. I would expect she's been improving the ground game. And I think she could go in here and kind of piece Miranda Maverick up on the feet. Like, she throws a lot, Priscilla Cachoeira does, and she throws hard. And she keep that pace is a question that I would have, but she also gets hit a lot. Miranda Maverick just hasn't impressed much with the hands on the feet. So, yeah, if she could stuff takedowns and you know, just wear on Miranda Maverick, I like her chances. Problem with Maverick is she hasn't been finished at all. So,
yeah, and there. Yeah, and the thing also with this fight too is, like, if Miranda Maverick can't get the takedowns and it plays out on the feet, you know, to the judges, Maverick could have, you know, maybe the same amount of volume, but to the judges, Cachoeira is going to be landing the way bigger shots. She's got more thud. I mean, that always outweighs volume, and obviously we've seen the judges want damage. Who's got the better moments on the feet? And I think that's Priscilla Cachoeira all day here. So, yeah, not a bad dog play at all, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, to go off that one, she won a decision against Jeon Kim. Jeon Kim landed 170 significant strikes. Priscilla Cachoeira landed 102. She got a unanimous decision. She just throws hard, and the judges like it. I also think with the short turnaround for Miranda Maverick, she's probably looking at this one like it's easy pickings for her because she's coming off the loss, and she's like, all right, I want to get back on track pretty quickly here, and I think I could just take down Cachoeira and submit her. Could she do that? Absolutely. But if she thinks she can do that and she can't, then it's going to go downhill, and I like Cachoeira's chances. So for the sake of the show, why not? I'll take a flyer on Priscilla Cachoeira. And, yeah, I'll definitely keep an eye on her as the week goes on. But those are the picks for UFC 291. 12 fights in total, and hopefully none of them get canceled because I hate when that happens. But a later start. We had the early start last week at UFC London. This one's going to be the normal pay-per-view time of 6:30 p.m. Eastern time. And we'll look to keep her going, moving in. But you got any last thoughts?
This main card is going to be insane, in my opinion. I think it's just one of those cards that crazy shit's going to happen. So buckle up.
Yeah. And we'll see how much the elevation plays a factor in this one, but always got to take that into account. And hope that, the fighters don't gas out too bad, or at least they've adjusted somewhat. But yeah, if you want the premium membership, link will be down in the description. And you can stay up to date with everything at the Double Leg on all the medias, at HI Picks on the medias. For me, where can they find you?
On all social medias at the Parlay MMA.
All right, till next time, when we see you, we'll be recapping UFC 291, the Double Leg. Signing out.